Good evening. My name is Michael Tennant, and I'm the Regulations and Policy Coordinator in the Inland Fisheries Division. The purpose of tonight's webinar is to present information to you about proposed freshwater fishing regulation changes for license year 2023-2024, address questions, and to provide information on where you can provide input on these proposed regulations. The Inland Fisheries Division will seek approval of the proposed regulation changes at the Texas Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting on Thursday, March 23rd. If approved, these changes will be in effect September 1st, 2023. Community fishing lakes are public impoundments 75 acres or smaller, located totally within incorporated city limits or a public park, and all impoundments of any size within the boundaries of a state park. Currently, the department recognizes over 850 CFLs, 70% of which are in major metropolitan areas. The proximity to urban areas and ease of access leads to heavy fishing pressure. The Inland Fisheries Division formed the CFL committee to evaluate angler participation and preferences and concerns of angler confusion related to fishing regulations. The goal of this evaluation was to develop simplified regulations that would be easy to understand and enforce while enhancing fishing opportunities and to address angler preferences. The CFL committee designed and conducted the statewide CFL Angler Survey from March 1st to June 30th, 2021. The survey resulted in 887 angler contacts. The points on the map represent the 152 CFLs where angler survey responses were obtained. The CFL Angler Survey revealed these angler preferences. Catfish and largemouth bass were the most preferred species among CFL anglers, while many CFL anglers indicated that they preferred to fish for any species of fish that would bite. Catfish and rainbow trout anglers were most likely to harvest, while most fishing for largemouth bass and sunfish is catch and release. This suggests that harvest-oriented anglers are primarily focused on species stocked by the department, such as catfish and rainbow trout. Over 60% of anglers were satisfied with their catch rate of targeted species, and CFL anglers who indicated intent to harvest typically desired 3 to 10 fish. Staff recommends amending the CFL definition to clarify the water bodies to which CFL regulations apply. The proposed change would replace the term public park with the phrase municipal, city, county, or state park to exclude federal parklands, which are not regulated by the department, and to exclude impoundments greater than 75 acres that are totally within the boundaries of state parks. Current fishing regulations for CFLs follow the statewide standards with special exceptions for catfish, bass, and sunfish. Special exceptions include catch and release only, and minimum, maximum, and slot length limits for bass. The proposed rule change would implement a daily bag limit of 5, all species combined, with one black bass greater than 14 inches for most CFLs, and continue catch and release only exceptions for 5 CFLs. We are hopeful that this new regulation will enhance the overall fishing experience for CFL anglers by reducing regulatory complexity and enhancing and diversifying fishing opportunities. Current pole and line restrictions allow game and non-game fish to be taken only by pole and line and/or employ no more than 2 pole and line devices at the same time for a variety of public water bodies. Pole and line is a line with a hook attached to a pole. This includes rod and reel. The proposed change would continue most existing pole and line restrictions and clarify restrictions for CFLs and 10 state park lakes that would not be defined as CFLs and add restrictions for Deputy Darren Goforth Park. Pole and line restrictions are recommended where fishing pressure is intense to minimize angler conflicts and to distribute fishing opportunities. The proposed changes to CFL regulations require changes to catfish regulations for 3 state park lakes that would no longer be under CFL rules because of their size. Biologists have indicated that these lakes require more restrictive catfish length regulations due to limited natural reproduction. The proposed rule change would implement a daily bag limit of 15 and a 14-inch minimum length limit. Biologists reassessed the size of Dixieland Lake at 57 acres in fall 2022. Dixieland Lake now meets the definition of a community fishing lake, reassessed at less than 75 acres and within a city park. The proposed rule change would implement a daily bag limit of 5, all species combined, with 1 black bass greater than 14 inches. Biologists have managed water bodies listed on this slide consistently with CFLs for a variety of reasons, including their proximity to a CFL, angler use, and fisheries management survey data. This proposal seeks to maintain harvest regulations consistent with CFLs for those water bodies. To maintain this consistency, the proposed rule change would implement a daily bag limit of 5, all species combined, with 1 black bass greater than 14 inches for public water bodies listed on the side. Lake Forest Park is a 15-acre community fishing lake located in the city of Denton's Forest Park. Lake Forest Park has recently been renovated to improve the fishery and provide quality urban angling opportunities. Renovations include dam replacement, silt removal, a pedestrian bridge, shoreline access, including a dock and kayak launch, fish habitat, and fish stocking. The fisheries management goal for Lake Forest Park is to develop a quality, self-sustaining largemouth bass population. It is important to provide protection to those initial year classes of stocked largemouth bass to achieve the fisheries management goal. Current largemouth bass regulations follow the statewide standard with a daily bag limit of 5 for black bass and 14-inch minimum length limit. The proposed rule change would implement a catch and release only regulation to protect initial year classes of largemouth bass. Lake Nasworthy is a small reservoir on the southwest side of San Angelo in Tom Green County. The largemouth bass population has a long history of slow growth, poor size structure, and body condition. In 2015, a 14 to 18-inch slot length limit was adopted, intending to improve size structure and body condition. Over the past 7 years, creel data show low harvest, and fisheries management survey data show no changes in bass abundance, condition, or growth. Harvest of largemouth bass under the slot length limit is needed to restructure the population. Also, bass tournament anglers have increasingly voiced displeasure with the slot length limit, and angler opinion survey data show most anglers prefer a return to statewide standards. The proposed rule change would return to statewide standards as special exceptions are no longer needed, which would consist of the same daily bag limit and a 14-inch minimum length limit. Gibbons Creek Reservoir is privately owned and no longer open to the public following closure of the coal-fired power plant. Therefore, the reservoir boundary, special gear restrictions, and exceptions to statewide standards for largemouth bass are no longer necessary. Bellwood Lake is a small reservoir on the west side of Tyler in Smith County. The catfish fishery has low to moderate angler utilization. Because of the limited use of this fishery, it is unnecessary to maintain a special exception to the statewide standard regulation. The proposed rule change would return to statewide standards as special exceptions are no longer needed, which would consist of a daily bag limit of 25 in any combination, of which only 10 can be 20 inches or greater in length, and no minimum length limit. Tankersley Lake is a small reservoir on the northwest side of Mount Pleasant in Titus County. The catfish fishery has low angler utilization and limited recruitment. Because of the limited use of this low-density fishery, it is unnecessary to maintain a special exception to the statewide standard regulation. The proposed rule change would return to statewide standards as special exceptions are no longer needed, which would consist of a daily bag limit of 25 in any combination, of which only 10 can be 20 inches or greater in length, and no minimum length limit. Blue and channel catfish special harvest exceptions are in place for Choke Canyon Reservoir. Law enforcement has identified a need to establish the upstream reservoir boundary to delineate where these exceptions apply. The proposed rule change would delineate the upstream boundary as the State Highway 16 bridge on the Frio River, including all waters of San Miguel Creek downstream from the State Highway 16 bridge, to differentiate between the reservoir where special exceptions apply and the inflowing rivers. Largemouth bass special harvest exceptions are in place for OH Ivie Reservoir. Inland fisheries staff and law enforcement has identified a need to establish the upstream reservoir boundary to delineate where these exceptions apply. The proposed rule change would delineate the upstream boundary as the FM Road 129 bridge on the Colorado River and Amos Creek on the Conroe River to differentiate between the reservoir where special exceptions apply and the inflowing rivers. The department has determined that there is an error in the upstream boundary defined for Lake Conroe in the Texas Administrative Code. Existing department publications reflect the correct road name and thus conflict with enforceable provisions currently in the Texas Administrative Code. Special harvest exceptions are in place for Lake Conroe. As noted here, you can visit the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department website to comment on proposed regulation changes for 2023-2024. The Commission will meet on March 24th to review these proposals, take public input, and vote on the proposed changes. The meeting will be held at Texas Parks and Wildlife Department headquarters in Austin, Texas, and starts at 9 a.m. More information about the meeting will be posted on the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department website. Once again, proposed regulations approved by the Commission will start September 1st, 2023. That concludes my presentation for this year's proposed freshwater fishing regulations. Thank you.